very concerned about how it's all going to work at ground level. But I'm with Councillor O'Brien on not having policy ducks in a row, reasons to refuse it.
So you're approving the application?
I haven't quite decided yet. I'm not going to abstain because I don't believe in abstaining anymore.
Councillor Rose.
Thank you, Chair. I think that there's an issue of balance again this evening, and I think there's been a lot of work, clearly, and the aspiration around this mixed-use, sustainable interpretation of the Old Kent Road and light industrial and replicating for the 21st century what the original intent, which might have been previously B2, the endeavour is there. But I have concerns around things that I think might be material considerations, but in essence, I'm lacking the information to make a judgment at the moment because of the late information, and the scrutiny under questioning has revealed quite a couple of fundamental issues which we've had verbal assurances of, but I'm not reconciled that the current conditions and can achieve that at the moment. So I would like to propose a motion that this application is deferred pending receipt of more information in writing, concretely outlining the future sort of 20-year cycle or longer for the residents, social, intermediate and market in relation to their relationships as neighbours and part of the same community, and how this is to be planned for. And that, so I'm proposing a motion for deferment at this point.
Normally when a motion is proposed, I'm supposed to intervene and take it. And I wish you hadn't. I would hear from your colleagues. No, it's okay. Can I ask you please just to withdraw your motion for the moment? Thank you. And I can ask for Councillor Hargrove to express your opinion on the application, please.
I mean, there's a good use of my. Yes, sorry. There's
a lot of benefits to this scheme, and I think that for me the concerns around the light industrial issue and how you manage that with residential. We can't be sure about this, but I've got a feeling there is a solution. Generally, I thought a lot of the concerns could be conditioned and resolved. I was much more assured when we came back and we realised that for social tenants that it would be social rents and that there's not some escalating service charge concern about them. But I think having listened to some concerns about sustainability and long term, my position on this would be to defer, to get that extra information that we need.
Councillor Newman.
It's quite interesting actually to the idea of mixing the light industrial space with residential is something which I sort of ask questions about, and I suppose I would want to be convinced that it works, but maybe it does, and maybe it's a sort of groundbreaking sort of thing in this area, and that would be great. The thing that really does concern me still though is this issue of the sort of the what happens to the service charges, and you make provision, I don't know, do you do it for 20 years, you may do it for 30 years, you have a fund to sort of so that social tenants aren't paying it, but I really can't understand how that works, and I think we need more information, and I would support deferring it.
Thank you. I'll just make a few points. I'm trying to avoid repeating what's been said already. First of all, I want to address the application from the point of view of design. I'm convinced that this is a good design. it's exemplary and most probably win an award. You never know. Where is he? Yeah, he'll win an award. There you go. Will most probably win awards. Okay. I do find the integration of both residential and commercial activity on the same plot still a challenge. And our colleagues from Orchard Road will concur that possibly we're not taking into account the enormous impact each of these developments have on what has been the traditional industries along the Orchard Road and the inevitable changes these applications are causing. And I've taken that into account in my own reasoning of why I may or may not support the application. But I'm satisfied that the Orchard Road offers real opportunities both to upgrade the current industrial base, but also simultaneously provide homes which are in critical demand right now. Okay? And there is the compromise, what one has to make. Okay? So in that regard, I'm supporting applications which are creative, well designed, and are able to meet our broad aspirations. I'm nevertheless concerned. I still remain concerned about how we share space between families and large vehicles. Okay? I need to see examples. I've not seen enough examples where this happens, where you can cohabit the same space. I've had a few children, and when they're very young, if I didn't keep an eye on them, God, they could easily run into a road. Can you imagine that being the case in the same estate that they live on as well? I think that's not acceptable. So I'm not convinced that the applicant has sufficiently designed clear demarcation line between these vehicles, which are not simply cars, but are industrial vehicles, which are coming into what is essentially a residential space. Okay? I'm not convinced by that, but I'm convinced nevertheless the professionalism of those around me at the moment will take it into account and ensure, both in the Section 106 and the monitoring of this development, that can be resolved. Okay? But I'm very concerned about it. Secondly, I wanted to talk about the, and I know this is not strictly planning, but this is optics. I do not like the developments which have separate entrances for different tenure of persons. It may well be beautiful doors right now at the outset, but I'm thinking 20, 30 years' time, what will those doors actually look like? Okay. And I can't reconcile it, and regardless of what any cabinet member might say to me thereafter, I can't reconcile that. I don't believe that it's sustainable. And those of us who've got long hair around the Peckham area remember those estates, and they were innovative, forward-thinking estates, but we had to regenerate them because it didn't work. I don't believe it will work myself. Okay? But nevertheless, I'm willing to trust the professionalism of those around me and concede that possibly it could work. Okay? But I'm very concerned about it. Okay? Thirdly, and this is really on the question of using a building which has industrial base at the base and domestic dwellings immediately above. I'm familiar with my own ward where you have a retail space and dwellings on top, and I know what the tension that potentially could cause. Here, of course, this is a sort of light manufacturing environment, and as one of the objectives have pointed out that if you wanted to put in insert vents, and I take the point that it had to be inbuilt at the point of construction, but I find it very difficult to understand how you could have someone who's metal or glass or whatever it is, it's compatible with a residential estate. I can't see that those two activities being compatible on the same footprint at first glance. Again, I could be totally wrong, but I don't have enough evidence to contradict what I've just said. So I'm willing again to concede and trust the professionals about myself. And my last observation has to do with ourselves and how we operate as a committee. And of course, I'm very conscious that the objectives had very little time, despite the fact the responses were very detailed, I must say, to consider all of the evidence, so that there was a robust response to the evidence that is before us today. And so I'm very conscious that we may not have given them sufficient time, and I want to keep thinking about that. And I said this at the last meeting, I'll keep thinking about that as to how we give objectives sufficient time to really look at these applications, because of course I don't believe these are objections for the sake of stopping development. It's objection to ensure that those developments are compatible with our broader aspirations. Okay? And I think you're coming from a good place, so I'm not going to berate you, but I will say that possibly our current systems don't take that into account. I'm now just going to close by saying that this has been a really interesting evening. It has shown why planning committees exist and why it's the final determination is by lay people, elected members, and we have to take those hard decisions. But I'm not inclined to defer. I'm inclined to approve the application if we could tonight. Okay. So, but I'm noting though that. There have been a suggestion that we should defer, and I note at least 3 members have indicated that, but there's 1 member who has not given us a definitive answer, and I wonder if Councillor Morris wishes to give us a definitive response.
On refusal or approval?
If you give us a different response.
Or deferral? Well, my response is not to defer. My response is not to defer.
Okay, I'll go back to, thank you.
I will go back to Councillor Rowe's motion to see if we can get this through. Okay.
I put the motion to the rest of my committee that on balance, given the opinion or the interpretation of the information we've had so far and the late submission of lots of information and the highlighting of a fundamental point around the long-term management of the site itself and especially the mixed-use tenure and the residents within it, that we defer pending further information as highlighted in our discussion this evening.
Is there a seconder?
Yes.
Councillor Newen? In that case, I'll go to the vote. Those who wish to support the motion as stated by Councillor Rose, please show.
For Chair.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Those against?
Are you Chair on this? For or against? Yeah, for against, Chair.
And I have the casting vote. The motion is lost. In that case, I now go to the motion as is set out in our papers, both in the main report and as stated in our addendum, which I can't find, of course. You put it wrong. And as set out in the addendum, can I first of all, is there a seconder to the motion as set out in our main report and stated in our addendum? Of course.
There were a number of conditions proposed that would normally be. Sorry, could I just that normally when we have situations like this where there are last-minute things before in advance of the committee, the conditions are normally set out in the addendum report, but they haven't been this time. So we are going to have to make them up as we go along, as it were, which is not normally how we proceed.
Can I just clarify? So the only additional condition that we're suggesting is the site is ensuring the cycle lifts to the right dimensions, which was brought to our attention subsequent to the addendum being produced. But very happy that that would be worded. Where there's proposed to revise conditions, that is recorded in the addendum in terms of the B1C provision.
Thank you for that, Julie. Are there further conditions you're seeking? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, it's not so much a condition, but the applicants were very, very clear about this bifolding door, that it doesn't need to be a condition, but actually that, you know, it is part of the design and they are going to do it. So.
When they were talking about that, I was just noting down that I think one potential solution would be, it's just the wording of that condition where it talks about looking into the feasibility of it. We just delete the reference to feasibility of it, but we still require the details of those doors to be submitted, so we still have those details submitted.
So that's one condition that's been amended, as amended. Okay. Are there further details you want to pick up on here? If not, I wish to go to the vote again.
Second.
Yes, thank you. Seconded. In that case, so I'll repeat what I said a moment ago, that we support the motion as set out in the main report and as amended by this committee this evening. Can I ask those who will support the motion?
4, Chair.
Thank you. Against?
3 against.
Abstention?
1 abstention.
Thank you very much. The motion has succeeded. Thank you all for your evening. And good evening.